Star Trek Strategic Operations Simulator was developed and released on the Atari 2600 video computer system in 1983 and was based on an arcade game of the same name. If I had to guess, the arcade version probably came out right around the same time as Wrath of Khan in 1982, and then all of the ports were done sometime in '83. The arcade version came in a stand-up cabinet as well as a sit-down cockpit-style version. It also featured wireframe vector graphics as well as digitized voices.
Entering Sector 1.2.
So how did they cram all of this into an Atari 2600 cartridge? Well, it's not as bad as you'd think. So the story here is you're a potential new captain for the USS Enterprise on a training mission. Your mission is to save the Federation from their greatest enemy, the Nomad, in all caps. I guess this was supposed to be taking place on a simulator and not necessarily for realsies, sort of like the Kobayashi Maru mission shown at the beginning of Wrath of Khan. The reason I say that is because you spend most of the time just going around mowing down random Klingon battle cruisers, and it seems like that would trigger an interstellar war, wouldn't it? Also, let's take a moment and talk about this Nomad enemy. The manual doesn't specify, but I believe this was supposed to be based off of an episode from the original series called The Changeling. In that episode, the Enterprise encounters a mysterious probe called the Nomad, which was launched from Earth several hundred years earlier. It was thought to have gone missing, but instead went rogue and started trying to wipe out everything in the galaxy it deemed to be imperfect. Sorta like V'ger, which, unlucky for us, includes all biological life. It's neat that they tried to tie this to the original show. Okay, so here's how Star Trek on Atari 2600 works. It's a single-player game. The screen is broken up into 3 sections. On the upper left, you've got some readouts and gauges as well as your score, and we'll get to all of that in a bit. On the upper right, you've got a radar scanner. This screen on the bottom is your actual view screen, which is a first-person view that you're seeing from the bridge, and that's pretty cool. There's also this part of the screen at the bottom that changes colors, and that's tied in with the gauges. We'll get to all that. The game is divided up into 10 sectors. Each sector is divided up into 6 stages. The stage breakdown looks something like this. You'll start off flying around fighting Klingons while trying to defend your starbase. So this is sort of like Star Master in that you're trying to protect your starbases from the attacking Klingons. The starbases can be destroyed, but you can also dock with the starbases to replenish or store up supplies. Again though, similar to Star Master, there's a scoring penalty if you dock with the starbases, so you'll want to pick and choose your spots if you're going for a high score. They made the most out of the simple Atari 2600 controls, and I feel like they did the best they could. The game actually came with a physical overlay you could put on the controller. I'm not sure it would have been all that necessary because the controls are pretty straightforward, but it probably looked cool anyway since this was supposed to be a futuristic space simulator. You move the Enterprise forward by pressing up on the joystick, and then you can steer by pressing left or right. If this seems weird at first, just focus on the radar screen for a bit before trying to look back and forth between the radar and the view screen at the same time. Then you'll see it's really just a light version of Asteroids, but with first person thrown in for good measure. The fire button fires your primary phasers, which you have an unlimited supply of. However, you can also fire photon torpedoes by pressing down on the joystick. The phasers can take out a single enemy, but the torpedoes can take out a whole line of enemies if they happen to be right in a row in your firing line. I mentioned the gauges before, and this is where you can see important information like how many torpedoes you have left. The green blocks let you know how much shields you have left. The red blocks are your photon torpedoes, and the blue lines are how many warp drives you have remaining. So that's another thing, you can engage the warp drive for a brief period of time by pressing the fire button and then holding down on the joystick. You'll move forward at a faster speed and you'll gain invulnerability for a bit. This is helpful if you're finding yourself overrun and just need to make a quick break for it. Also, the color at the bottom flashes depending on your situation. Again, similar to Star Master. If it gets down to a red alert, that means you've got no shields left and you better get to a starbase ASAP. In the third stage of each sector, you'll fly around an asteroid field, and I didn't realize this until I read the manual, but you're actually supposed to be steering around trying to find more starbases to dock with so you can stock up on supplies. And you'll want to do that because when you get to the last stage of a sector, you'll fight the Nomad and he spazzes all over the screen, flinging landmines all over. The longer Nomad flies around, the more obstacles you'll have to deal with, so you'll want to try to take him out as quickly as possible. Try and save your warp drives for this part if you can so you can catch up to him quickly. Take him out and you'll get this super awesome Atari 2600 cutscene. Hey, it's actually nice that they got the theme in there at least. So that's basically what you do in this game. Each sector gets a little tougher, although there are no game variants to choose from. I'll say this, it's not as bad as it could have been and actually does get kind of fun once you get the hang of the controls. Also, it's pretty sweet seeing a first-person perspective on Atari 2600 and seeing the ships get larger or smaller depending on distance. It's certainly not super detailed or anything, but it's still nice. However, if I had to gripe about something, it would be that this game maybe tries to do too many things and doesn't end up doing either of them particularly well. With the way the controls work, you'll end up spending a lot of time staring at the radar screen chasing down enemies. Frankly, I felt like when I was using phasers to take down the Klingons, I wasn't even really bothering to check the first-person screen down below. Just firing the button with the Enterprise sorta aimed at their ships was usually good enough for a hit, especially if you're trying to line them up to use your torpedoes to take out more than one at a time. Plus, in later rounds when stuff is flying fast and furious, you're just not going to be looking back and forth that much. You'll be sticking with the radar screen. But you can't see your phaser blasts on the radar screen, so it's tough to tell precisely where you're aiming. So it kinda just turns into a watered-down version of Asteroids. Maybe this would have worked a little better if they focused more on that point of view and added some more detail rather than trying to do the first-person perspective. I don't know. As this game exists today, it's an okay space shooter with the Star Trek license slapped on. Still though, this is an impressive effort given the limitations of the hardware, and the fact that it's even playable at all is probably a miracle. So I gotta tip my cap. Not bad, guys. Not bad at all. What did you think of this one? Did you play this one back in the day at all, or discover it more recently? What are some other space shooters on Atari you'd like to see me take a look at? As always, thank you for watching. Please don't text and drive, and I'll see you next time on Friday Night Arcade.